I'm Steve Nave with the Actors Showcase, and sitting next to me is a very fine actress, a lady you've seen in motion pictures and television. In fact, she was the first black James Bond girl with Roger Moore, and her name is Gloria Hendry. Gloria, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve.
So we like to tell people how actors get started and things that can help them in their careers. And you've had a very long career. You're a very young woman still, but I mean, you've worked a long time. How did you get started as an actress?
So how I got into acting was more like, I think, luck. And being at the right place at the right time. I was modeling, as a matter of fact, back in the 60s.
Wow.
I just dated myself.
Oh yeah, my grandfather told me about that period.
Boom! I got you. But during the 60s, it was, and for us, the civil rights movement, and as we were called at that time, Negroes and coloreds, we weren't called black. There was a movement going on, and we started modeling, and I just catapulted in doing acting. I never studied before in my life. I got commercials after commercials. And it was only a handful of us in New York City that were doing commercials and voiceovers, etc. And we were breaking all kinds of colored lines. It was a catch-22 time. Be darned if you do and be darned if you don't. Meaning it was hard to be recognized in such a frivolous field, as they called it among professionals, because modeling and acting was never considered at that time as a profession. It was only when the studios still had it, remember?
Sure. Was it considered respectable, or was it?
Well, it wasn't. Not really. Not respectable, because, see, the studios had the actors at that time. They groomed their own at that time. You wouldn't dare be doing a film without being underneath a studio's guidelines and sign a contract to a studio, and that was the ultimate.
Right.
If you could get a contract with a studio, they would groom you, change your name, etc., and make you into a star. So it was all a part of the times. I just fell in time, and people just gathered up, let's do this, let's do that. Okay, exploring, and it was really exploring.
Now, you were also a pioneer, I believe, with the Playboy Club. You were one of the top Playboy bunnies, wasn't that correct?
I was one of the few women of color,
right.
And there was only a handful of us, too. And the New York Playboy Club, I think there was one or two before me. That was, and when I became a bunny in '64.
Wow, you were about 3 then, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Yes.
Yeah, and out of being a bunny at the Playboy Club, a number of industry people would come and frequent the club. And my first movie was, let me see, what's the name of that? For Love of Ivy, with Sidney Poitier,
yeah.
and Abby Lincoln and Daniel Mann.
That must have been quite a thrill.
That was incredible. It really was, because I was working one evening, and Daniel Mann and
the director,
right. And for some reason, I can't remember the casting director, but she was there. It'll come to me, hopefully before this conversation is over. But they were sitting at my table, and as I was waiting on them, normally when I come over, good evening, I'm your bunny Gloria. May I please?
Did you give your tip?
I sure did. May I see the Playboy key card, please? And he said, how would you like to be in a movie? I said to myself, yeah, right.
I've heard that one before.
Oh, oh yeah, I mean, the club was just Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis, Dean Martin. I mean, you just name it. That was the caliber of people that came in there. And that was New York City, between 5th and Madison Avenue.
Did you grow up in New York? Or
No, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and I moved to New York as an adult. But I also worked for the NAACP. I worked for Roy Wilkins, the civil rights movement, and Roy Wilkins was the leading attorney for the de facto segregation. And I worked there for 4 years as a legal secretary. So my background. I'm
sitting here with history right here.
Yeah, my background is really involved with the law, and I'm still involved with the law today. I never left the law field. I went back to it. It's been very good for me. But back to the Playboy Club.
Right.
Daniel Mann asked me that, and I said, talk to the bunny mother. Believe it or not, I never thought they would. They did. They talked to the bunny mother. I never auditioned, and there I was doing
a movie with Sidney Poitier.
And I had the opportunity to meet Sidney Poitier.
Yeah. Now, I was just asking you off camera, I said, who was your biggest influence as an actor, at least working with? And you said?
Sidney Poitier.
Yeah.
He was very, very significant to me. He was very important. He allowed me, and I say allowed because when you are a celebrity of that caliber, it's difficult for them to open themselves to people, but he opened himself to me. I would stop by his office just on a fluke. Come on in, Gloria. And talk to him and just say, well, I just went out on an audition and so and so and so and so. What do you think I should do? And I would just sometimes sit and cry with him and tell him my feelings about the industry, and then he would tell me what I needed to do. He was, and I mean, this went on for years.
You were crying because?
Well, because of the frustration.
Frustration?
The industry is something you can't put your hands on. It's not like a resume. You can have a resume that goes around the corner, and you can't even get arrested. Now, what is that about? Mm-hmm. You can have no resume and be hired.
You could be working at a Boney Club.
And you could be walking down the street. Somebody says, hey, I'd like you to star in my movie. Right. I mean, so there's no one way of approaching this industry.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about another actor that helped influence you?
Oh, yeah.
Who was that?
Roger Moore.
Yeah.
Live and Let Die.
Why did Roger influence you?
Roger helped me with the celebrity aspect. And that's, in getting the Bond movie at that time was one of the biggest grossing as well as one of the biggest spending movies to get.
And to this day.
Well,
in fact, they send you all over the world to this day.
I don't know about that today. There are movies being made for $40 million.
Yeah.
But during that time, and I shared he shared his limousine with me every day. Mm-hmm. And people would approach him for his autograph. He would in turn give it to me every time.
You mean you got his autograph and you
no,
took it with you? Oh,
he gave me to sign my autograph each and every time.
Well, we jumped to Bond. I wasn't going to go that quickly, but I mean, you worked a lot. You in the '70s, you were the lady. You worked. They called it the black exploitation.
I did
movies.
7 movies inside of
some of the biggest.
I did 7 movies in 3 years.
You and Jim Brown and
Fred Williamson
and Jim Kelly. What were some of the movies that you did during that period?
I starred with, a matter of fact, when I was filming Live and Let Die, I was in London and at the Pinewood Studios, mm-hmm. Dubbing my part in whatever they needed to do.
Right.
And I got a phone call from California saying, Miss Hendry, would you please do, we would like very much for you to do Slaughter's Big Ripoff with Jim Brown. And we'll send you the script. And that was that. Boom, I got the script. I said to myself, Jim Brown, the world famous Hall of Famer Jim Brown, absolutely.
Sure.
And that
he'd already been doing movies because he'd done The Dirty Dozen and several other movies. So.
I was very happy, and matter of fact, we're friends today.
Yeah.
Ron O'Neal did Superfly,
right.
And he is a fine actor, a theater actor, who turned around and got his little camera and filmed and wrote his own movie up in Harlem, and he was starring in it, and he was also one of the first independent filmmakers to walk around with his film under his arm, and he went to the film houses and literally said, play it. And those days you could do that. You can't do that today.
Right. Well, how do you see the 70s different than today?
Well, that's
because you're still working, of course, all the time, but I mean, it's a whole different industry. So, I mean, isn't it? I mean, from your perspective?
Well, that would be nice if I was working all the time.
Well, okay,
but it would be really lovely. But during that period of time is that actors or producers could literally film a movie, put it underneath their arm, and go to the film theater and say, man, would you play it for your Saturday night? They did in those days. They don't do that today.
No.
That's a definite. That's how independent filmmaking really got its start.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that it's easier for actors now, or
no? It's very difficult.
Yeah,
because even back in the day when the studios had them, it was easier, meaning that you didn't have to pay for your own acting classes, singing classes, fencing classes, dancing classes. You need to educate yourself, or even go back to an academy, to go to school to study the art of theater, mm-hmm. or even to have workshops. Zena Provandi, one of my mentors, and she's no longer with us, but I believe she used to be an acting mentor with MGM, I believe. I think it was MGM. And I had the privilege of having her for 10 years. And she told me, she said, it's the subliminal, it's what you are thinking underneath.
The subtext.
The subtext is very important. So you need to, you don't learn lines. You learn the substance of what you're saying, what you're trying to say, and then you're taking a writer's words and making it your own. So what you're thinking is also connected to the emotion, and you are able to fill it up with the words. So, and then the meaning is there, and it just flows. It's not about the words. It's about what you're thinking and what is the objective. Say if you are in love with someone, being in love with that person, as your dialogue is coming out, you're thinking about how they kissed you, or maybe how when you first met them for the first time, and you're reminiscing. Maybe you were sitting, I'm just using a parallel. Maybe you were sitting in a restaurant and you were drinking the tea and you looked into his eyes, and as you looked into his eyes, it just began to move you, and you saw him and you spoke his name and it just lit you up. And so underneath all of that, the words that you're saying, it comes out and it comes through, but it's also relative to the dialogue. In other words, if it's a love scene, then you can use your real substance of yourself with the words, and it's not the words. And then all of a sudden the words just come. And not only that, if you really are so much into your dialogue with the attitude at the same time, read it backwards. Read the lines backwards, and then you begin to think of what you're saying. Then it locks in. Just read it backwards, sentence at a time. And that really helps.
Yeah, I think you told me that. I was like,
yeah,
wow,
it really
I never heard that one.
Because I've had to have I had the opportunity to learn a leading part in 2 days to go on stage.
Wow.
And that takes some, but.
That wasn't the play we did.
No.
That wasn't that. Well, what are your plans as an actor? Or do you do other things besides act? And do you direct? Do you produce?
Yeah, I do.
And is that what you're going to be doing in the future? Are those your plans?
Well, I find that most actors have such full lives. You too. You're an actor, you're a director, you're a producer. I mean, you're so many things. And I don't think anyone in this industry is not. And we are just such enormous, we have so much energy that none of us do one thing, because that's just the way the industry is. So I'm a director, I'm a writer, I'm a producer, I'm an actress, I'm a mentor, besides being an aunt and a friend and as a wife.
And a pioneer.
And Live and Let Die, just to let you know how I got that movie, I had said no lines at all. At all. I never read one script. Basically, I was asked by my manager, Lloyd Comar at the time. He called me in California. He said, look, they want to see you for the Bond movie. I said, you've got to be kidding. He said, yes, they want to see you. I said, well, first of all, I'm in California, and I'm not flying back for an audition, because most auditions you don't get.
They wanted you to go to New York?
Yeah, they wanted me to come back to New York. I said, who's paying? He said, you have to fly back on your own dime. And I went, I got to think about that. Because first of all, I said, excuse me, I'm not well endowed, okay? I'm not tall, okay? I am a woman of color, okay? Etc. So there's so many things against me. So why would I want to audition for a Bond movie? Who are you kidding? So anyway, that's how I felt at the time.
Right.
And it was really planted. And he called me again. So I said, okay. I crunched my numbers, and I charged it on a credit card, and I flew in, and I stopped in my New York apartment, and I changed clothes. I said, because I'm a model, I knew exactly what to do. I put on the right colors. So when I walked into Harry Saltzman's office, he stood up. He was such a distinguished man. He stood up and he pointed, and I sat down, and he said, how was your flight, madam? I said, it was fabulous. Of course, I was lying. He said, and I was like, okay, now just calm down. And he said, how soon can you fly to New Orleans? Would I like to introduce you to Guy Hamilton and Roger Moore? Of course, as an actress, I said, anytime. He said, okay, we will have a car ready for you in a couple of hours. Where can we pick you up? It was almost
Wow.
that quick.
Wow.
I mean, I passed by a couple of dialogues, but it was that quick. I left and went back home to my New York apartment, and a limousine picks me up. I have never ridden in a limousine. Took me to the airport, dropped me off, of course, in the French Quarter. Another limousine picks me up. I'm like, whoa, and this is in 72.
72?
72.
Yeah, it came out in 73.
In the wintertime of
Yeah.
November in 72. And here I am going to the French Quarter, and I said, okay, well, I'm a woman. I got to be careful, you know. You got to take care of yourself. You're going to be with a whole lot of men here, so you got to take care of yourself. So I'm sitting there being prim and proper, and I met Roger Moore, and I met Guy Hamilton, and he sat down with me in a restaurant, and we were eating, and they just continued to have the conversation, and et cetera, et cetera. And he said, would you like to come back to the set? I went back to the set, and then after that, they said, well, we don't know who we're going to pick for the role, and would you like to stay over for the weekend? You know good and well I'm not going to stay for the weekend, because therefore I have to wine and dine and drink, and I don't want anything, you know, being thought of anything. So I said, I'd like to leave on the next flight. I did. I went back to New York City, and then I went straight on back to California. In 2 weeks, they called me and said, my manager, you got the role. I said, what? I got the role, and that was that.
Well, you know, all that advice you gave me about reading the lines backwards and all that, you never even had to audition, you know, you just walk in the door.
That's what I'm saying.
I got to find out what colors to wear, I think, is
Remember what you said, that
Yeah.
You have a resume and et cetera?
Yeah.
It's almost like it doesn't mean anything.
Well,
at a
that doesn't
certain point.
always happen, but
It
it's
doesn't.
interesting.
It's very
Now,
interesting.
being an actor of color, you've seen a lot of changes, I assume, I mean, for the better?
From where I stand, my God, we're here to stay. Because back in 73 to 75, everything stopped for us. Mm-hmm. There was nothing. No independent filmmaking for people of color. Nothing. In about 75, 76, some of us were living in our cars. We lost our homes, and because we were making money.
Were you one of them?
I had to go. I went back to school.
Ah.
I went back to school. I went back to school, meaning I went to a theater academy because I never studied. I went to Los Angeles City College Theater Academy. Anybody here from there?
No, but I went to LA Valley College.
And I studied for I was on campus for 5 years because, I was on campus for 5 years, and I got my degree in Theater Academy, and I was on my way to Cal Arts to finish and getting my bachelor's, or, you know, et cetera. But the industry called. But during the 70s, a number of us are gone, because that period of time, the studios closed their doors, they made their money, etc. And literally, they made their money, and they just went on and just stepped right over us. Nothing happened for a good 10, 15 years. Some things came out, but you can count them. And Spike Lee brought back that was the Renaissance. The 70s for us was the Renaissance. From the Machows, we had our own movies, people of color back in the 40s. We had a bunch of our own movies that we had. And Machow is one of the most well-known directors and producers from that time, and I choose his name at the moment. But the Renaissance was us. But we also catapulted independent filmmaking. The people of color started independent filmmaking. And then all of a sudden, when the studio stopped, about 75 for us, everything seemed to close up. It took up until the 80s when Spike Lee came out with The Girl Gotta Have It. And now we are here to stay because a number of us have the money and the backing and and the know-how, because during that time a lot of us didn't have the know-how of how to produce a movie. We were always guessing, but a number of us do now.
What do all the guests, what do all the people that come to these shows ask you? I mean, they must just get crazy when they see you, because
what I represent, that period, and it's not me, and I understand that.
Yeah.
It's from that period of time. Yeah, it was. Can I just say this? It was exciting, very exciting, and also scary, and also terrible, Because during that period of time, first of all, and as an actress in my family, it was a no-no, an absolute no-no. What? You're picking to be an actress? What kind of career is that? You know, so...
Because everybody was a professional.
And not only that, nudity.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just bring that up. Nudity. It was a no-no to do nudity. And the reason why I think I got the movies at the same time and doing Black Caesar, and I'm saying to myself during that period of time, why in the heck all these wonderful actresses, Judy Pace, Vanetta McGee, I mean, all these wonderful actresses, Brenda Sykes, did not get the role to play opposite Fred Williamson in Black Caesar. It was nudity. And I was a bunny. So nudity didn't bother me. No. It didn't bother me. Nudity didn't bother me also, but I didn't know the stigma of doing a nude that would hurt me with commercials, that would also hurt me with any other endorsements or anything that I did. Well, when I did the nude, that stopped me from television almost in my tracks. Well, I did television for a minute. I did, but then after a while, it was like a lot of things just happened.
I want to ask you one more question.
Okay.
Now, you're a lady of action. You keep yourself fit and everything.
Yeah, I do.
You know, you've done martial arts and everything.
Yeah.
What do you feel about women doing their own stunts and doing action films and
You know,
stuff like
I'm
that?
glad you spoke on that. I apologize for not really exploring that area because during the time of the 60s, for women of color, there was no women of color for stunt at all. As a matter of fact, women doing their own stunts or women doing leading roles action-wise, it didn't really exist at all. So the pioneering time of women, period, across the board, to be doing action roles and leading action roles was all brand new.
Well, you've done stunts yourself. I've seen as a character.
I did.
I've seen you on film actually doing stunts.
Yes, because I
had
no choice. I had no choice. Well, no, the Bond movie, they had a...
Well, maybe not the dangerous stuff, but you did.
Let me back up.
Okay.
The Bond movie was a man who was white.
Really?
Yes. Put on a dress, my height,
Why not?
with an afro, and they painted his skin dark.
Did they pay him for that, or did he just want to do that?
That was done at the Pinewood Studios.
Oh, okay.
And when my gun comes through the door, that was a man.
Ah.
Yes. Wow. So women...
So I'm not as impressed with you then. I thought you were so much...
By the time I got to the Bond movie, they had enough money to do that too, but at the same time, they didn't have a woman do it. Very important point.
But Fred Williamson and Jim Brown and those, you had a lot of...
No, I did my own.
No, that's what I said. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, and so women...
Don't get me in trouble here.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So women to do action movies was like a whole new entity. And also to get enough women to do these roles was definitely a new entity.
Well,
yeah.
We're happy you made it and survived, and
me too.
It's going to just keep getting better and better.
Yeah.
Right. We're very happy you were a part of our show again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
very
so
much for allowing me to talk about it.
Thank you, Gloria Hendry. Steve Nave for the Actors Showcase. We'll see you next time.